Folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good, presented by Betches Media. It's Saturday, which means I'm actually kind of happy because I get to talk to our guest about one of my favorite shows on Peacock. It was just announced this week that it is the #1 unscripted reality television on all of our TV sets or computer screens or whatever we're looking at this show at. But we've got back one of the best players of last season, somebody that I think should have gone much farther, somebody that I want to succeed not only in life but in reality television, even though he says he'll only do one show a year, if that, because he's focusing on his real life. I do want to point out he has the Cruise of Deception, where you can play real life traitor-like events on a cruise ship with other traitor players. We have the one, the only Carter Bergersen with us back today. Hey!
What is up, everybody? I am so glad to be back to talk Traitors again. And I think this past episode is one of the greatest Traitor episodes that have come out in the past 3 seasons. My mouth just kept dropping, and I was like, there is no way this is happening right now. And then it just kept building. And like that roundtable, the build up to that roundtable was one of the greatest build-ups in like the past 3 seasons of Traitors.
I couldn't agree more with you. It was thrilling, and I want to not just shout out like the players involved and of course Alan, the host, but the sound design, the editing, everything was so tight and it kept you so engaged for an hour and 7 minutes. And I've watched it twice now, and we kind of had a little bit of dip in the second episode and like the beginning of the third, and then I got back into it, and the fourth episode just blew it out of the water in terms of if you had a question if you like this show or not. The fourth shows you why, but it's almost so good that the negative part of me is like, well, where do we go from here? Because it blew the game so wide open that I'm kind of nervous that I feel like it could be a gigantic SHIT show from this point on.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Just kind of like when Dan outed Phaedra, it was kind of like season 2 was absolutely fantastic, that first 5-6 episodes. And then it slowly began to fall apart because it's like, oh, everybody knows who the traitors are. Where do we really go from here? And you can kind of predict who's murdered next, who's banished next. So I'm really hoping that doesn't happen this season already. But this past episode was one of the best episodes. I think this is why you watch Traitors, is for that episode.
And it was thrilling, and I just want to remind people we are talking spoilers here, so if you have not watched it, just turn this off now and wait to listen to this at a different point. But I'll start with a question since you participated in this, and I do want to say I talked to Phaedra Parks this week, and she says hello, she loves you.
I already watched that episode too.
Well, by the way, it was like a gigantic commercial for Silk, but I was like, you never pass down an opportunity to talk to Phaedra. You never pass that opportunity.
No, you can't. And she's always busy, so she's always got something other going on than you can't just talk to her about one thing. She's got so many things going on.
Totally. But it was so fun. I brought your name up and she's like, oh, and I love that real relationships have formed through this show, which is great. But since you participated in this, I was thinking about the roundtable discussion at the end of each episode, in terms of, like, Wes was speaking about Nikki going to, like, say, I think Nikki's the traitor. Do they edit down those speeches? Like, do they get rambling that we don't hear where you're like, oh, that's a definite cut?
Yeah, there's got to be people could talk for minutes and it gets edited down to like maybe even 30 seconds of their whole spiel that they just gave. They might get sentences, and sometimes you can hear it too. Like, since I was there, I can notice it more because I remember being on season 2, and it's like, okay, they said a lot more, and you can kind of hear it sometimes just get cut when it sounds like they stopped speaking, but they still were speaking, if that makes sense. Like, maybe they ended their sentence and then they were going to say something else real quick, and then it just got cut right there.
Did it ever get too intense? Like, where they're like producers had to step in and be like, stop. Does it ever get too intense at that round table where somebody has gone too far and it never makes it to air?
Not while I was there, because I know Alan has talked about, and it's been advertised crazily, that he almost had to step in this season to stop a fight. And I don't know. I don't think it was this past episode, so I think it's still coming.
I also want to point out a correction that I need to make. I said Sam Stryker does Alan Cummings' wardrobes. It's actually Sam Spector. I wanted to make that correction. Credit is very important, especially when you're doing beautiful design work on Mr. Cummings. We also had some horrible outfits this week, especially Tom Sandoval in his hanging out after Top Gun Academy outfit at the end with the leather jacket and the glasses. That dude cracks me up, but you want to keep Sandoval as long as possible. Would you agree?
Yeah, he's the comedic effect. Like,
But
that's
he's
what
also
he is right
somebody
now.
that the Traitors can just kind of mold and sculpt in a sense. And I have this weird prediction that they will recruit him at some point.
Oh, just to throw him under the bus?
To throw
Is
him under
that
the
your?
bus and to make him an easy target, because I just have a feeling he is just somebody, and we see that at the very end when there was that great conversation at the very end with Wes and Chriselle and Lord Ivar, where he's, it's like, dude, Boston Rob, I'm going to just follow whatever he says from now on. And then Wes is like, how do you 100% know if somebody's a traitor? And then Tom's like, you don't, dude. And Wes is like, no, you do. And he's like, you do, yes, yes. And he's like, you can only 100% know if you are a traitor. And to me, that turned the game again on its head, because Boston Rob, for having a brilliant move against Bob the Drag Queen, I feel like he's next.
Oh, him and Danielle too. Because anytime Bob the drag queen was speaking, he's like, "Yeah, I won the bookcase with Danielle." Like, they were both bringing each other into it. Like, everyone knew they had like a very strong alliance. So I'm gonna be shocked if Danielle's making it longer, and especially Boston Rob, because now the only thing with Wes is once he gets rid of Boston Rob in a banishment, because he knows he has to eventually, because they're looking at him like one of those late entry of men, like the second episode. Everyone's thinking one of them is a traitor. So eventually Wes is going to have to banish Boston Rob, just to show like, hey, it was Boston Rob, not me. I'm not the traitor. But at the same time, he knows Boston Rob isn't going to murder him, because then everybody's going to be looking at Boston Rob or Derek. So then he's got a 50-50 shot of going home. So
yeah, Wes knows how to play these games, and I feel like Wes is going to go far as a faithful. Who are your other favorite faithfuls this week that are on your radar now that weren't in previous weeks or previous week?
Yeah, well, Dylan obviously still is. I think Lord Ivar, if I had to say somebody, it's the people that you don't think would go far as a faithful go far, because the traitors don't want to murder the people that can't figure stuff out on their own. So like Tom Sandoval is going to go far, because Wes is asking him all these questions and he's still not being able to piece it together until like the very end. It's those people that go far. It's the people that can figure out stuff pretty fast and are on their feet that are going to be leaving the game shortly.
So, I mean, and that's why I feel like it's been weird that they've targeted the housewives. But this week, they got rid of Jeremy in the Coffin ceremony. And Jeremy obviously comes from Survivor, which is gameplay. So the Survivor and Big Brother and Challenge players, those are real threats, because they are used to a reality experience that is based on gameplay and solving something. Whereas like housewives and stuff, they're used to drama and they're really entertaining, but they're sometimes really bad at putting things together.
Yeah, and I still am like a little puzzled why they murdered 2 housewives right in a row, or got rid of 2 Survivor players right in a row. Like, I don't understand the traitor strategy necessarily. Like you want more people, you want a group to be bigger. That way, when you're doing roundtables, you're like, guys, look at that group. It's so big. Someone in that group isn't murdering their friends. We need to take someone out in that group, instead of you doing it as a traitor and murdering that group, because then you're doing it instead of the banishments that way.
Well, I believe what they think they're doing is sowing chaos. Like we're just throwing all, like just chaos. There's really no rhyme or reason, yet that's kind of a bad strategy. Just like Bob the Drag Queen, we talked last week, where he is so entertaining, so fun. I'm so glad he's on my radar now because I'm a fan, but he did so much. He talked so well. He buried himself in those first 3 episodes. And then this week, after the Stonehenge challenge, when he throws that comment out about the new players, Wes, Derek, and Boston Rob, says, you didn't get a shield, and one of you guys are probably a traitor. That's what was the final nail in the coffin, because Boston Rob is thinking 3 episodes down the road, not just tonight.
Yeah, and Boston Rob, you don't get to throw out his name without being punished for it. That was absolutely incredible. The way he just shifted, he's like, I'm taking you out now. Like,
Oh, and
it's over for you.
And then when they got back to the castle and he just started doing his little like going around, he was so smart in that he went to Dylan Ephra, because Dylan has always suspected Bob the drag queen. He got Dylan on board, and then it was like just ants marching around throwing out Bob the drag queen's name, and it was so brilliant. But at the same time, I just keep going back to and watching the preview for next week. He's now pissed off Boston Rob, Carolyn's more upset that they're not listening to her, but he has pissed off Danielle. And in the preview, they say, you got to be a silent assassin to take out a mafia boss, referring to Boston Rob. I truly do not think Boston Rob will survive next week's episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't either. And that one thing I want to say too, I had to go back and watch this because I still have TikTok, even though it's getting banned technically.
By the way, I know everyone says it's getting banned. I think Trump's going to pull it right back up on Monday. So
I do too. I do.
But I really do.
Anyways, my girlfriend and I watched the episode. I went on TikTok like the next morning and like right when I woke up, and I saw a clip of Boston Rob walking around the castle in his socks, so he didn't make noise while he was walking around and getting people. I was like, there is no way. So I go back. I watched.
That's such a great detail that I didn't notice. He had his shoes off. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I didn't even think of that. So I went back. I'm like, there's no way. And people were saying he was doing it so people didn't hear him walking around the castle when he was talking and doing the side conversation. So he was being like that silent assassin, no shoes, so his footsteps weren't like clocking around the hallways in the castle. I was like, there's no way. And he did.
So good.
Yeah.
Wow, that really blows my mind. Which, by the way, your girlfriend, I got to DM her back. She reached out, so we're going to have her on the show. I'm so excited to talk to her. To take you guys through the episode, we at the end of last week, obviously the traitors are Rob, Bob the drag queen, Carolyn from Survivor, and Danielle from Big Brother. Last week we got out Ion from Dubai, Real Housewives, and Tony from Survivor. And the traitors at the end of last week's episode had to choose 3 players to shortlist to be put into these coffins written on a scroll, and they have to put it in this bookcase room. And where we left off in last week's episode, they were all in the bookcase room, and then Gabby Windy from The Bachelor kind of was going there to get a drink and all of a sudden heard voices and noises from behind the bookcase, and that's where they left off. And at the beginning, Gabby heard Danielle's voice, but I believe that is the only voice she heard. Is that correct?
That is correct. And then she was thinking, no, this was Nikki that was told by Jeremy that Danielle's a traitor.
Yeah, so you find out that later is that Nikki, before Jeremy died, said he was suspicious of Danielle. So then you have Gabby saying, okay, I heard Danielle's voice. You have that. So already we have the fake tears that a couple people have clocked that they noticed that Danielle was overreacting potentially to every loss, which, I thought she was a good crier, but they thought it might be a little too extreme. So Gabby goes away. Dylan is suspicious. The bookcase is open. And then Dylan goes in there and Danielle goes back in there with him, which is kind of brilliant because the next day at the breakfast, when you find out who got, what's the day's plans, they come in and Gabby's like, listen, everybody, who's in the bookcase? Who was in the bookcase last night? And Danielle says, well, I was in there with Dylan. So she's got an excuse, because she was in there with all the traitors, but she was also in there with Dylan, and it kind of blows apart Gabby's oh shit, I guess she does have a good excuse. And they said Bob's like, well, we were all in there at one point.
Yeah, Bob killed that with we were all in there at one point. I wish Gabby fully went into the bookcase because then she could have seen all of the traitors. But you don't think that in the moment, but she totally could have walked in that bookcase and then saw, it was at that time, it was all the traitors in there because she was referring to that moment. But when Danielle and Dylan went in there, it was a different moment.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it was, totally a different moment. I will say before that breakfast, we have the actual coffin ceremony where Alan's out there in the night. How cold is it out there, by the way, at night?
Well, so they filmed this during May, and I filmed my season during September and October. So they filmed at a completely different time than I did.
Was yours was yours colder then, do you think?
It's hard to tell because it's probably the same temperature-esque because that's spring for probably Scotland, and then I was filming late fall for Scotland.
Well, I'm just going to say it looks cold. It looks cold out there.
It's cold.
Yeah, and Alan does his best Alan of like, hear my bell and heed it well, because it doesn't summon you to heaven, but to hell. And we get the 3 players that will be in the coffin, and it's Jeremy, Nikki, and Sierra. Now remember, one of the traitors could have put themselves, or 2 of the traitors could have put themselves in the coffin to throw it off, but they chose 3 faithfuls, thinking that the players, the faithfuls, would assume 1 or 2 of those people would be traitors. So they get into this coffin. How long do you think they have to actually stay in the coffin?
Depending on how long that took to film, like filming that could easily, with all the faithful there, that could be 30 minutes. And then the traitors doing their things, that could be, I bet they're in that coffin for maybe 2 hours. Potentially.
But I gotta tell you, Bergie, I would love it. I love laying down. Like, I would be like, as long as I got a jacket on, I think I might even fall asleep in there.
Well, yeah, and that was my thing too, because like in season 1, they buried people alive. I was like, this might be my like one time in my life where I can get buried alive and not be worried about it. Because people are like, oh, I'm so worried about it.
Wait, I love this. Is the one time in my life. I've thought about this multiple times. This is the one time in my life where I think I'd be safe. Yeah.
Yeah, because like they have so many health and safety people like right there, like that you don't see. There's like 200 people ready there to unbury you if anything were to go wrong. So I was like, I am down to jump out of a helicopter. I am so open to do any of these things because I know I'm not going to get hurt doing it because there's going to be so many people right there to help.
I love that. It does show you what a big production this is, and you can really see it on screen. But I was also questioning, just from a logistical standpoint, when you have the traitors after the 3 people have been chosen to be in the coffin, and there's this great moment where Alan... they each of these traitors have to make their case, so they're in the coffin and Sierra's like, come on, you guys, I'm a faithful. Just let me out of here so I can hunt you guys down, hunt the real traitors down. And Nikki says she's good at gameplay, so she should be kept and she can put more money in the prize pot. And Jeremy says, listen, keep me and I will work with you to the traitors, which I thought was an interesting tactic.
Well, and I think he knew that Danielle already knew. He thought she was a traitor. So maybe there was a potential to work with each other to keep each other in the game.
I thought it was a nice move that obviously didn't work. But then I love that Alan's like, off with you, to bed, off with you. And everybody's leaving except for Tom. I think legitimately Tom thought somebody was actually going to die, like for real. Because Tom like stays and he's like, Tom, go. Tom, now go. Like it was hysterical. Like that's why you want Tom is just such weird comedic relief on this.
But also back to when you said he'd be a perfect recruit. I think everyone knows he's too dumb to be a good traitor. So he may never get banished. So if you recruit him, he's hard to get rid of at the Roundtable.
No, Bergie, what they'll say, hard, but what they will, I feel, and maybe you can speak to this, is I feel if you're in that position where you're suspicious of anyone, you would start going like, okay, wait a sec. He was more recently famous for Scandival, which was a cheating scandal where there was deception that went on for 7 months. So maybe, even though it got found out, maybe there's a chance that he could, like, I feel like people would like start having conversations going, well, maybe, like, do you get to that point where you're like, well, like people were suspicious of you? Like, I mean, like you have to look at everybody and you can convince yourself of crazy things.
You can't, yeah. And I think that's easier to do in the beginning of the game than the late game. I don't know why, but that's my feeling. But I didn't make it too far into the late game, so I have no idea what that.
I like that. Okay, so wait, say that thing. So the light game is when there's less people there, right?
Yeah, the late game. But
okay,
the early game is when everything is getting like
established
thrown to the fan. Anything could be a reason you're a traitor. The middle game is more like, okay, they voted this way, they did this. But then I wasn't really there for the late game. So I don't know how much the late game really works out. But I can speak for the early game. That's where shit is at the wall. You have no idea who's getting banished for what reason. Any reason can come out. That's probably like the first 3 or 4 episodes. And then by like that mid episode, like that's where I was when I got eliminated. I would say that's where you're like, you start having more reason to like the voting patterns, the murders. That's when like reason comes into strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's really interesting to to think about. Sierra also during this time uses a curse word. She said, I'm a fucking faithful, and uses the word, the F word, which comes back at the round table later, which I thought was interesting, which also just goes to show you anything that you say, somebody can say psychologically that might make you a traitor. So that's why it's this tricky game. And so we're at that point. Alan's like, "Go, Tom, do not linger. Go, go." And, this was the question. They all go to bed. Can you did they let you read a book? Did they let you bring a book? How do you entertain yourself? Or do you are you just tucked into bed and do they say, don't move until the morning?
You, in your bedroom, you have a TV, your notebook, and that's pretty much it. So you still have cable in your room. And then you also have your notebook, so you can write down notes. I watched a lot of soccer games or football games while I was out there. I was like, oh, I'll root for Denmark tonight, whatever, while I'm writing notes in my journal.
So it's not like they have Peacock over there and you can watch previous seasons of Traitors.
No, that is totally against it. You can't come up with new strategies while you're probably in your room. You can write in your journal about stuff you've heard and blah, blah, blah. But it's not like you can watch previous seasons of Traitors. It's cable TV. So there's maybe 10, 11 channels on your TV. So I was watching. And
I would assume you're not allowed to hang out with other cast members at night
Not at all. No.
Yeah,
no. Because then you could realize, where's this person at? And then they're back at the castle murdering somebody or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, I want to shout out to whoever does the songs, the music. There's always some da 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 da. I like the little Irish little songs and stuff. I love it so much. It makes me laugh, and I think it's great.
I just also want to say the sound effects in this. Anytime someone says traitor, it does the the glass hit or whatever. You can hear it. That was spot on. And the music this time, I don't know. They made the longer version going to the round table. That was fantastic for the buildup. And it was also when Bob the drag queen went up there to give his speech, it was a different song that I've never heard before.
Yes.
So it's nice to hear all those little differences and how this show has themes to it, like a normal TV show would. It's nice that you can feel it. It almost feels like it's not reality television. It's
no, it's a
TV,
full, it's a full-on production. It is a Broadway show in a sense, and you have to really give yourself to that experience because I think we're used to watching normal reality television, and this is a cut above. And I mean that in the best way. I think it's really good gameplay, but there's a silliness about it, a mystery. There's a darkness. I think a lot of really great things are put into this. So much hard work. The Traitors meet above the coffins, and my question was, do they truly? I felt like they shot that before or after. I feel like that was too close to the coffins for them to have that conversation where they were like, "Yeah, let's get these three people out for the price of one." Rob says.
Yeah, I have no idea how that works because I was never a traitor, so I don't know if they were really that close or did they film that after they did the murder or before before. I don't know how that actually worked. Yeah.
It was good to finally see Sierra put some oomph into her game. We got to see a little bit more. Sierra was fairly quiet the first 3 episodes. This, she came a little bit more alive, which I thought was really kind of nice. So you're getting to see more of that dynamic from her. The next morning, we have Gabby, Chriselle, and Dolores come into the breakfast room first. And Gabby obviously tells them about that library thing that she heard. Now, remember, Nikki is part of the Bambis with Gabby and Chriselle. They've called themselves the Bambis. Robin's in there as well. And Robin, per usual, has no idea what's going on. She's like, hey, I believe Nikki and Jeremy have been traitors this whole time, which I thought, I was like, Robin is on a hot streak of just being so wrong 100% of the time.
Yeah, I don't know why. Sometimes it's better to keep your mouth shut than to be completely wrong, in my opinion. That was
yes!
My thing is just don't just throw shit at the wall because then eventually that can come back to bite you in the ass in the late game. It's you were really saying these people were traitors when they were not traitors.
Well, my thing is, if you're throwing out Jeremy's name and no, Jeremy is the one that got murdered, I think if I was one of those other women, I'd be like, Robin, you said this. Was that part of your game as a traitor to just throw that stuff out? So I think, and just to your point earlier, that's why I think Sam Ashgari will go far, because I even forget that Sam Ashgari is on this show until he'll say one line and I'll be like, oh, that guy Sam, Brittany's ex-husband, is there. So they'll keep him, I think, for a long time.
Oh, he might even win the show just because he's not doing anything. Because like as a traitor, you're like, okay, I need to get rid of someone that's going to make an influence in the house, and he ain't doing anything. So like, I'm never gonna waste a murder on him.
Yeah, no, I don't. What do you think of Gabby Windy from the Bachelor? What do you think about her?
I, I don't think. I think the whole Bambi alliance is completely off. They're deer in the headlights right now. Like they have no idea.
So
they're
actual Bambi. But I will say I think Gabby is as the Bambi Alliance, I think Gabby, to me, is the smartest. I think she's way smarter than people give her credit for. I do think she's also good comic relief, but I think she knows, like, I think she has some good jokes in there. I think she's a little left of center. And I think, I don't know, I think she can put things together. But as she says, when the, spotlight is on Nikki, goes, listen, she might be a traitor, but I don't know. I really like her. I'm not going to vote for her. And that's okay. I like her.
No, I love that part where she's like, she may be a traitor, but I'm not going to vote her out yet. I was like, that's a good strategy to have too. And I thought it was pretty funny. My girlfriend and I both laughed at that.
Yeah, I mean, because you can keep, like, even if you know somebody's a traitor, you can still keep them. You can save it for another time or when it's the right time to get somebody out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of my strategies. I was not going to take Phaedra out until the final fire pit. That was, in my head, that was my strategy. Peter and Trishelle wanted to get rid of her, and I was like, I'm not going to vote for Phaedra.
Well, Pilot Pete had that fatal flaw where he was so good at being a faithful that he was also just speaking up and he was making really good points to the point that it puts a real giant target on his back and throws a lot of suspicion his way. And Dylan, I thought in those first 3 episodes was like really kind of modeling after Pilot Pete. But now it's very interesting because we have the alliance with Rob, who is a traitor. And Rob says point blank, I'm going to buddy up with this guy and then I'll kill him at the very end, which Rob's already thinking at that final fire pit.
Yeah. And, that's a good strategy for Dylan too. Like, oh, I can say, and also for Rob, it's very suspicious. It's like, well, you've been here the whole time. How have you not been banished yet either? Like it could be him or Boston Rob at the Roundtable. It could be thrown both ways. Like the same thing that Wes made that argument last night. How would you know? Right off the bat, and Dylan made the argument first. So like Boston Rob could throw Dylan under the bus too to try to stay alive.
Yeah, no, totally. But they'll find out that he's faithful, and then that'll screw up Rob's game as well. So it'll be interesting when that happens. But I still think Boston Rob will go home next week, just because it's just once that conversation with Wes happened at the end, I was like, game over. Lord Ivar, Sam, and Brittany from Big Brother come in next. Sam, somebody says something about his headband, and he's like, I got it from Brittany, and they're like, wait, they think he's talking about Britney Spears, and they're like, no, Brittany, the Big Brother lady that's here. Which I thought was a great moment. Then we have Bob Harper, Tom Sandoval, Dylan, and Bob, the drag queen, Tom, Dylan, and Rob come in as a group. And this is where Tom is dressed in his like brown leather jacket and his aviators. Robin brings up the bookcase conversation. We already talked about that moment in the sense that they were able to explain it away very clearly. Now, Nikki and Sierra come in, so we find out that Jeremy has been banished or has been murdered. And Nikki, they start asking questions, and Nikki says, I know there was at least 2 traitors. I can't tell you if it was more or less. And it was somebody with very light feet. And I forgot who threw it out. Then they're like, oh, well, then it can't be Bob the drag queen. And Bob was like, ah. So I thought that was a great moment too of listening to the footsteps, but then also giving an excuse that Bob is not a traitor.
Yeah. Well, also too, you see Danielle get nervous. Like she started asking Nikki right away, like, so you think the person with light footsteps is a woman? And then, that set off the alarm bars for Nikki, because the night before Jeremy was like, I think Danielle's a traitor. And then Danielle's asking that question to Nikki. And then, it's like 2 and 2 go together.
But at this point, the traitors think what they've done is throw suspicion on Sierra and Nikki. So they think that they're safe at this point. Alan comes in and Rob still thinks it was the right move to get rid of Nikki and Sierra. Random shots. There's random shots of just Tom Sandoval in the castle looking suspicious. And then he's like, hey, dude, I would like to say something. I think Sierra got recruited, dude. He's bringing So the recruitment is so interesting, and if you watch other seasons and other iterations, is that the traitors can recruit eventually a faithful to become a traitor, and they can either accept it or they did this with Pilot Pete last season, didn't they?
Yeah, and it's so in the rule book. I don't know how much I can talk about it, but it's pretty well known. If a traitor gets banished, the traitors can recruit up until a certain episode, and then so let's say, for example, this is an example. There can be 4 traitors. There can be up to 5 traitors until episode 7, and then on episode 7 there can be 4 traitors. Episode 8 there can be 3 traitors. So they can keep recruiting till that number. Episode 9 there can be 2 traitors. So like that's something that can happen. So if there's not 2 traitors on episode 9, there's going to be 2 traitors on episode 8. Or you know what I mean? Like they can replace up until a certain episode. So there's always could be that number.
But I thought that moment just made it that I was either like, oh, so Sandoval's watched the previous seasons, or, like it just seemed he was aware of the gameplay or the game afoot. But it was fascinating that he threw that out there when that didn't need to be thrown out there. Like the recruitment thing he brought up out of nowhere, which I thought was wild to even put that when they're trying to focus on who it is. You're just widening the pot.
And nobody's going to be recruited yet because you guys haven't banished the traitor yet. So I don't know why you throw that out there. So
you don't need it. So I thought it was like a classic, like bumbling move, which was just so comedic. So then we get to. Okay, wait. Can we talk about the prize pot? At the end, people win $250,000. I feel like let's kick this up to $1 million because this is a big production. And I don't understand, at the end of this episode, you have $55,000 in the game pot so far. I didn't keep track of the numbers, but I was like, is that $55,000 in addition to the $250,000, or is it all told $250,000?
Yeah, so my thing with the prize pot with this game is it's just so random how you can make it to the end. There's so many twists and turns. It's not like the best player necessarily wins. Like we were talking earlier, the best faithful doesn't always win because, the best faithful, you can make an argument, is the person that's banishing traitors. Because a lot of times you could have the most idiotic faithful win because the traitors just wreck their own game at the very end. So it's not like the most strategic or best players win with this game. Survivor, you're probably having the sole survivor win the $1 million. With this game, it's so random. You never know what could happen. You could make it all the way to the end and then just randomly get killed one night. So it's hard. So it's just I don't know what the best way to go about it. I would like to actually see a change. Maybe, you have the prize pot right now, it's 55,000. So whatever it is at, and when the faithful banish a traitor, everybody splits the prize pot that voted for the traitor out. And then you reset the prize pot and then you keep going and you just keep trying to make as much money as you can while playing the game. But at the same time, it could be if a traitor makes it to the end, they steal all the money you earn too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would love to see some of the financial stuff, I don't know, get a little more complicated as the seasons go on. We also have this fun relationship forming between Dylan and Dolores from Real Housewives of New Jersey. Some people have said this is the Phaedra and CT of this season. That's yet to be determined. Obviously, Dolores is with I don't know what but it's a cute relationship. They seem like they're, there's a nice friendship building that I truly enjoy. And that's what I think what's great about reality. When you mix them, you get to see who gets along with who. You had that good, strong relationship with Pilot Pete. I like that. It's kind of nice to see.
No, and I totally agree. They have some sort of relationship forming too. It's I think Bob the Drag Queen is a traitor too, but I'm not going to vote him out yet. So you have to come up with a different name. And it's
Dolores says if you bring it up, Dylan, you will be killed because he will kill you if you put Bob's name up. She's protecting him of going I see what you're saying, but be careful because he will murder you.
Yeah, and I like how they're looking out for each other. And you said, I love seeing people. It's the multiverse crossing over in Marvel. It's it's fun to see people that you didn't expect to cross over.
I do love that, but I will say, and by the way, Bergie, if you're not watching this on YouTube, most of the people listen to this podcast, but we do have a YouTube version where you can see in his background, he has Across the Spider-Verse poster that deals with the multiverse. And I will say, sometimes I get very frustrated with the multiverse theory just because I'm like, there's too many options. I don't like multiverses because I want things to be black and white. And the multiverse adds so many other layers to everything, which I think can be very unfair, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I could talk about Marvel and like how it's gone downhill since Endgame, but we won't do that.
Dude, I was talking about that with someone this week. Well, I guess we're not talking about, but anyways, we'll talk about Marvel at another point because I have some thoughts. They go to the competition, the competition game, and it's like this Stonehenge where they have to lift these heads and bodies and carry them up a hill. They have 45 minutes to do it. There's only 10 spots for bodies and heads, and there's 18 players. So this determines if you get a shield, and that protects you from dying. And some people are complaining about these games and these challenges, but I like them because I think it shows little character developments. And once again, Tom Sandoval just busting out first with his own head, very narcissistic. Like, I think it shows you something of like, just like the dude's just like, we gotta go. I think it's storytelling here. What do you think?
I am loving, okay, besides episode 2, I think that was really, I didn't like that challenge. I'm trying to remember episode 3 too now. What was episode 3? Oh, the clown one. I think episode 2 and 3 were really lacking in strategy within the challenge for shields and everything. Episodes 1 and 4 are fantastic strategy within the challenge because there's so many shields available for people to get, and you have to make in-game decisions while you're playing. Do I try to get this shield or do I try to help the team? And there's so many crazy layers to it that it's hard to, like, as a viewer, sometimes I think it can complicate things. But as a player, it's like, oh my gosh, this could like win or break the game for me by what I do in this challenge. And I love that aspect of it.
Well, one of the things that I was curious, and I wish they would tell us these stats, is I wanted to know how much these heads weighed. I wanted to know like how much this weighs to like determine like how hard this is, because a lot of people were having trouble with this, and especially Bob Harper. And Bob Harper, if you don't know, he was one of the coaches on The Biggest Loser on NBC. I used to watch The Biggest Loser all the time. I love Bob Harper, and he suffered a heart event years ago that has really, like, he survived it. He is strong, but at the same time in this competition, he's weak and he's very winded, and he makes this beautiful kind of, not speech, but just telling people like how, you know, like he was crying and it was very emotional. And I thought that was like just kind of a beautiful moment, but that also showed teamwork because you had Derek helping him and you had, I don't know, I just thought there were nice moments within this challenge, but also just people screwing each other over. Sierra, like at some point, Bob the drag queen tells Sierra like, dude, everybody thinks you're a traitor, and she doesn't get a shield. And at the very last moment, Wes is like, no, nobody thinks you're a traitor, Sierra, you're fine. I thought it was like some interesting game moves in there.
Yeah, I really appreciated this challenge. Just like you hit every aspect of the challenge. It was difficult. It wasn't a cakewalk, and it's fun to see people battle adversity in the ways that they do and how they overcome it.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so this is the moment where Bob the drag queen F's his game entirely because Bob says the new guys need a head up there because they all could be traitors. Boston Rob clocks this, and all of a sudden in his talking head, he's like, you just threw suspicion on me. You know, you can just tell he is steamed. And that immediately when they're walking down the hill, Rob talks to Wes from the challenge and says, we're going after Bob tonight. He threw us new people under the, but we're going after Bob. We're going after Bob. And, you know, Wes is like, okay. So Rob immediately, like, doesn't even think about it. Immediately says that to Wes right after the challenge, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, I also think Boston Rob knows he's on a limited time span in the show, just because the way he came in, everyone probably does think one of those 3 new guys is a traitor. So he's like, what am I going to do with the limited time I have here? I'm going to be entertaining as possible. I'm going to make some big game moves and go out with a bang. I'm not going to go down silently.
You said this last week. And I completely agreed. Boston Rob came in at such a disadvantage. Like, if this guy by some way happens to be at that final fire pit, I'll eat my shoe because it is so stacked against him. So it is funny to watch him really do what he does best and try to thrive in impossible situations. So you can never count him out. But like, I think it just, I don't know. But I love that he was like immediately got to get Bob the drag queen out. And they're in the car and Rob is also saying, listen, I think there is somebody, I'm not going to say their name, that is universally loved. It's been making these moves. I love even in his trying to convince people, he won't say the name yet. He said it to Wes, but he didn't say it to the car because he wants the car to say the name. He wants it to be put on them, which I thought was great. But he put it out there, which is also interesting. And then they get back to the castle, and that's when he says to Dylan, let's go for Bob.
Yeah, I also think it's like a psychology thing, because if you come up with the name yourself, you are 100% more likely to believe it. Same thing with like Wes in the bar at the end of the episode when he's asking them questions and he's just letting them connect the dots that Boston Rob is a traitor because he 100% knew Bob the drag queen was a traitor. I think when you come up to that answer yourself, like the psychology of it, you are way more likely to believe it.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, exactly. I've asked you this before probably, but like, if you could go back, how would you change your game? If you like had it to do all over again and we didn't, and you hadn't been like people that hadn't watched you in season 2, so they don't know you still, how would you have played your game differently?
So the early game, I think I played perfectly. The mid game, when I started to align myself with Peter, I remember the next morning when we had like MJ in the room, what I wanted to do was get out of my seat and just take MJ and go for a one-on-one conversation. And if I would have done that, like that was my instinctive was, I don't need to hear Peter got recruited. I already know he got recruited. Like I didn't need to hear that. Like I didn't know it. He did because he didn't tell me, but I knew it personally. Like I was like, he definitely got recruited last night and that's what he wants to tell us. But I was like, I didn't need to wait in there and hear it. I could have just, when MJ came in the room and like Peter didn't want her in there because I knew he was going to tell everybody he got recruited. I could have easily got up and then like, MJ, let's go outside for a walk and have a conversation. That's what I wanted to do. And that changed the game because then she went back and told Phaedra and the other people on the other side of the castle that we weren't letting her in the room. Then Phaedra tried to come in. So if I would have done that, I potentially could have saved the division in the castle. So that was one big mistake that I look back on. The other thing is too, when we got to that torchlight ceremony at the end of the day, I should have preached for myself. I just stood there. I didn't preach for myself. I said, I didn't like, I even said, I'm like, I'm okay dying for the faithful because I'd prefer that over banishment. And I wish I didn't say that. And I wish I was like, guys, I'm 23 years old. I have $220,000 or 220,000 miles on my car. I have student loan debt. Like I could really use this money. Phaedra, please don't kill me. Like, I know you're a traitor. Please don't. I wish I would have done more.
Dude, that would have been, I mean, like, dude, that would have been legendary because it would have been so real that I think everybody would have, like, stopped in their tracks. Like, they're like, whoa, this guy has more miles than all of us put together on his car. We've got to let him stay a little bit long. That would have been, well, what if you were playing with this team? Like, not in, like, what if you had gone in, would you have, what would have been your move going in this time with the people? How would you have tried to act like a badass? Like you come off like such a nice person. I mean, you are a nice person, but I also think you're perceived as that. And I think that's how you read. Would you have tried to work against how you are perceived or would you have stayed who you are?
No, the nice thing is my kindness is always associated with my weakness and people mistake that, you know? So like, that is like the strongest thing about me. People will think they can move me around and get me to do things that they want to do. And in the end, it's not a weakness because I could use that as a strength and get people together to vote with me potentially, you know, and then they'll mistake my kindness as a strength and then it'll be a brutality. I don't know how that works. There's a saying like that. my weakness, people mistake my weakness for strength. I will then use my weakness as a strength and it'll be mistaken for brutality or something like that.
Hey, listen, at the end of the day, I just think the fact is that you think you can get there the right way, but you're not afraid to make tough decisions. You're not, you know, like, don't mistake your weakness. Don't mistake your kindness for weakness because you're not afraid to, you know, make hard moves and go against potentially the grain for what you think is right and what you feel is right. And you potentially trust yourself and your internal clock.
Yeah, I definitely think, and I've been really thinking about, I think I would be better as a faithful no matter how I come into the game. Like, I don't think I could ever make it to the end as a traitor. I think it would be fun to play as a traitor, but I don't see myself ever making it the full distance as a traitor. There's no way I could pull it off for that long.
Well, I think that's a compliment to you. But anyways, we're back in this castle, and now the politicking starts, and we've got everybody trying to figure this out. Are we going to go for Bob the drag queen? Wes still thinks it's going to be Nikki. In fact, he talks to Sierra and says, you're going to split the votes between you and Nikki. So Sierra, I think you should vote for Nikki as well. Rob tells Chriselle we're doing Bob the drag queen. Chriselle says, I don't know if I can do that. I don't, I get it, but I just don't think I can do it. Derek talks to Nikki about Bob. Nikki says, no, I can't do that. I'm sorry. Dylan talks to Lord Ivar about Bob the drag queen. Rob pulls Danielle and Carolyn, the two other traitors, and goes, yo, I'm hearing Bob. He doesn't say, let's go for Bob. He says, I'm hearing Bob out there. It's happening with or without us, so we have to get on board. And Danielle says, no way. We have a plan for Nikki. Stick to the plan. And Danielle says, Bob is my ride or die. And this is the moment where you can tell that Carolyn, especially, and Danielle, but realize we are completely off the reservation as traitors. We are no longer a solid group at all, and it's chaos.
Yeah, in that moment, they definitely realized it was chaos time. Boston Rob took over.
Yeah. At this point, Carolyn, I think, is the only traitor without any suspicion on her. Would you agree?
Yes, she is the only one. I think Boston Rob is cooked next. Danielle could be very soon after, so that we might be seeing some recruits coming. We might even see a recruit for the next episode too.
You're right. I think you're totally right. So we get to the round table, which is always very exciting, and Wes starts. In these moments, Bergie, do they already know who's going to start, or is it truly whoever wants to start can start?
I remember the start. I'm going back to last season where episode 3, we all sat there and looked at each other for 2 minutes. And I started it. I was like, okay, Dan, I've been hearing your name the most today. You want to speak up? And it was just out of fear because nobody wanted to speak up. I was like, okay, I'll break the silence. And I'm just throwing everything on Dan. I was like, Dan, I've been hearing your name a lot. And that's how I started
I love that.
So Wes, that intense though. It's like who you're just looking at everybody. It's like, all right, who's going to start it? And it's just like, I don't know. Like it's scary.
And by the way, you guys
so
remember
scary.
they don't have the music that we hear playing during the roundtable. So they're piping music. Think about it. It's just a silent room where they're all staring at each other, which is pretty, that's intense in its own way. Wes says, listen, Nikki, he's sitting right next to Nikki. I'm coming for you. I believe you're a traitor. When Jeremy didn't come back, I feel like that changed our tune. I think you're a traitor. And Nikki says, listen, silence is golden, Wes, and you just rambled a lot. So you are suspicious, Wes. You are the one that is suspicious. And then we go around the room and Robin says, listen, I don't feel confident about anything. I need someone to come up with something right now. I love Robin just admitting, I have zero thoughts in my head. I need somebody to do the work for me. And then Derek says, I heard Nikki and Jeremy plead for their lives in those coffins. Sierra, I didn't hear that from you. And also, a suspect in an interrogation will use cursing as a defense, and you use the F word, which I thought was kind of an interesting way to dice. He was wrong, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, when people pull their careers into it, I think it just makes their career look worse, or them as in their professionalism look worse, especially when they're wrong. So that's something I would never do, is speak about my professional career in this game and then be televised to everybody and tell everybody I'm wrong a lot in my career. Why would you pull that in there? I'm a
if I was sitting there, I'd be like, I sit on my ass for a living talking to people. So you have to try. It was so funny, but at the same time, he thought there was this logic to it, which there is this bizarre logic. But then Sierra goes, listen, all I know is to be loyal. I'm a nurse and I stand with people who will ask me if they live or die. And I never lie to them, which is so sad because I'm like, wait a sec. People are literally asking you and you're like, you're going to die. That made me so sad that truly really is her gig in real life. I mean, now I think she's more of a model and reality star, but she was a nurse. And I just thought that was intense. And then all of a sudden, Rob starts speaking. And he goes, I've been playing these games a long time, and y'all have your eyes closed to the one who has been quarterbacking and has all the love and admiration from all of you. And I believe this person is the traitor. Every time there is a decision, there is a deflection. And then there's a pause, and he goes, Bob the drag queen. And Bob's like, zoinks! He's like, what? And then we're off to the races.
Yeah, that was a fantastic speech that Boston Rob gave. It's so weird, theatrical too. We talk about how theatrical this game is, but when people have perfect pauses, and then they go, and they're not even looking at the person, they go, Bob the drag queen. It's just where does that come from? Dan
that's training. That's training from television and watching these sorts of games. I'm telling you. Plus, I believe that there's also a little editing that boosts it, but it's so good. And Boston Rob, he's that guy. If he looked you dead in the eyes, he could probably convince you of something. He's just that good. But then Dylan immediately hops on the Bob Shocked, and he says, listen, Bob, the hardest part is everyone here loves you. That's why this is so hard, and you're so good at deflecting. And Bob is going to fight for his life. And he says, the one thing about me, I will tell you a joke, but I will never tell you a lie. I have been right about every single faithful. And he goes, 9 words. I swear to God that I am a faithful, which I thought, I was like, did he come up with this before? How did he know? That was such a good, because it plays into his final speech. He had to have come up with that before.
Oh, he had to do that back in his room and wrote it down. Okay, 9 words. And I was like, okay, if someone says, let me give you these 9 words, it's okay, they are definitely a traitor. Why would they know this is exactly 9 words coming up?
Well, but then I was trying to argue it in my head. I was like, well, he is kind of brilliant and he's super funny, so maybe he just really is that quick with everything. But obviously, this was at some point a strategy. So he says these 9 words, which I thought was really great, really entertaining. And Rob immediately fires back, I'll say 2 words. You're not. Great. Perfect. Because other people, if it wasn't Boston Rob, they would have maybe backed down a little bit. If it was just Dylan, you might have had a back down, but Rob went forward, which is only through somebody that's a professional in reality television.
Oh, and then 100% sure they're a traitor too.
Yeah.
And I think that's what got people was how was he so certain that this person was a traitor and wanted to take him out?
Yeah. But Bob continues. He says, I'm standing 10 toes down. Everything Rob said about me, you could say about him. And Dylan says, in a talking head, he's like, Boston Rob is just one of the legends. And he says it at the table. He goes, Boston Rob, you're one of the legends, and you just threw it in his face. And Dylan says, I grew up with an actor. Obviously, his brother is Zac Efron. And Bob the Drag Queen says, not a good one. And that was where because listen, you can say whatever Zac Efron is a good actor, period. End of. That's where Bob lost me, where I'm like, Bob, you must not have seen The Iron Claw that came out last year. An amazing performance, but it was a really quick slight. Zac Efron took shrapnel that he didn't deserve.
This is embarrassing, but as an 8-year-old, I loved High School Musical, and I had a Troy Bolton poster in my room. As an 8-year-old.
Wait, please tell me we have a photo of you with your Troy Bolton poster.
I don't think so, but
you got to post that on your IG.
I thought he was the coolest dude. It's High School Musical 2. It's the Bet On It song where he jumps. I was like, no way, he's the coolest dude. I want to be him when I'm in high school. That was my...
dude, I love it. But I thought that was a little funny moment. And, so Rob knows, Rob says, listen, my final thing, if I miss with this, you can vote me out next. That's how sure I am. So everybody now feels secure. So we go around the room for the vote. Dolores, Bob the Drag Queen. Danielle, Bob the Drag Queen. And when Danielle does it, who is a traitor, Bob starts crying. And obviously Danielle is conflicted because she says Bob's her best friend. Gabby says Sierra. Because Derek's argument sounded sound. Derek says Sierra, so we're tied up. Tom Sandoval says Nikki, LOL. Chriselle says Bob the Drag Queen, so she went for the hard decision for her. Bob votes Boston Rob, Bob the Drag Queen. Robin votes Sierra. Brittany votes Bob. Sierra votes Bob. Dylan votes Bob. Carolyn votes Bob, who's a traitor. Wes votes Nikki with his initial argument. Nikki votes Sierra, but misspells Sierra. Spells it Ceara, which I was like, interesting, Nikki. I don't know if that's part of your game plan to misspell Sierra's name. Sam Ashgari votes Bob. Ivar Bob. Rob Bob. And Bob Harper, Bob the drag queen. So Bob is banished from the game. Come forward to the circle of truth. Are you a faithful or a traitor? And at this moment, everybody, what I love and I loved about your last season too, is you guys get so invested in finding out if this person is a faithful or traitor. That anticipation is very real, correct?
Yeah, well, and sometimes this is really weird, but like as the votes come up, like I felt like I knew if the person was a faithful or traitor as the votes were being read.
Why? Just by instinct or because how they were acting?
Just by body language. It's like, okay, this person's definitely a traitor. This person's not a traitor. Like you could just feel, and I was only there for one traitor banishment, but I remember that Peppermint vote. I didn't even really think Peppermint was a traitor when I voted for her, but I was like, I can't throw out another name. Like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I don't believe Peppermint's a traitor, but I'm not going to go, John, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, Trishelle took a lot of heat for that vote specifically, and that was so early in the game. But you could tell. Anyways, so Bob stands up in the circle of truth, and he's like, "Faithfuls, listen to my words very carefully. I
swear to God.
Yeah, well, I won't tell it. I will tell you the truth, but I will never tell a lie. All of you, I have never lied. I said, I swear to God. And there's a pause. And he goes, and that was a lie, and I don't believe in, because I don't believe in God. I'm a traitor. And then he walks out, which I thought was, he brought atheism in it. All of a sudden, he's like, I don't believe in God. So I was like, that's such an interesting move to go with why and how you can explain all the lies and the traitors. So it was really this great move, and everybody erupts into a uproarious applause. Everybody's like, Boston Rob, Dylan, you're geniuses. Everybody's super happy.
Yeah, one thing, okay, so this is going back a little bit, but Boston Rob definitely screwed up in this roundtable too, because if people find out he's a traitor, he also said the Sierra and Nikki thing was a distraction by the traitors. So now people know, like, could pick up on it that they're not traitors at all. That was just a distraction. And if they think Boston Rob is a traitor, they know the Nikki and Sierra thing was a distraction set up by the traitors.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So that really could hurt them in the long run too, because now they can't, because I guarantee you if Sierra probably got banished or Nikki got banished tonight, the other one would be going the next night. And now people might not banish them if they banish Boston Rob first. They might never go back to that.
I will say there are only so many moves it seems like you can make in this game, so that's where it really depends on the personalities that they cast to really carry the show, because there's truly only, I mean, it's not like chess where there's a billion moves you have to memorize. I feel like there's a finite amount of moves. We get back to the castle, and Tom Sandoval is like just really into Boston Rob. He's like a magician, dude. Oh my God. And Boston Rob is like, or sorry, Bob the drag queen says in his goodbye talking head says, well, Boston Rob did this because I'm his biggest competition. But it was so sad because I think, he still didn't realize that he brought down his own game by running his mouth at the wrong times and going against the traitors. And he is, he wasn't Boston Rob's biggest competition. He could have been if he played the game a different way. But I feel like he sealed his own fate.
I 100% agree with you. It was just him. I feel Boston Rob did feel threatened by him because he could bring down his game. And he was like, I'm not going to let you bring me down before I can do something about it. I'm not going to just sit here and let you take me down. I'm going to take you out before, because he could very well pull down Boston Rob, Carolyn, and Danielle by the decisions Bob the drag queen was making. So I do think it needed to be done sooner than later, but obviously the way Boston Rob did it was way too aggressive, way too quick. He could have teamed up with Dylan and tried maybe not tonight, but the next night. But him doing that too could cause Bob the drag queen to come back from the next roundtable and take him out.
Yeah. But also Dylan is so hopped up and excited. Dylan does say, go like, listen, somebody says, Rob says, Dylan said Bob from day one. And Dylan says, I would have never done it without Rob. I would have never done it without Rob, which he meant it very truthfully and like passionately. But at the same time, it was like, wait a sec. Like, if people actually listen to what he said, that is more suspicion on Rob. And Carolyn says in a talking head, we're not a team anymore. We've given all of our power to Rob. And Dylan and Boston Rob go off and they say, we're a team. What are we going to do next? And Dylan says, I think Gabby and Bob Harper next. So you can tell Boston Rob's like thrilled because he's like, this has worked perfectly. And that was the moment we talked about earlier. The other people, Sandoval, Chriselle, Ivar, and Wes in the room. And Wes is like, how can you be 100% sure that a traitor's a traitor? And, Sandoval doesn't get it at first, but then he's like, no, if you are a traitor. And that is pretty much where we end it, correct?
Well, there was one quick brief scene after that one. It was them in like the kitchen, not the kitchen. Yeah, it was the kitchen. There was, I think it was Nikki, Bree. Oh, I don't remember necessarily who was in there, but they said, do you think one of those late 3 guys were a traitor? And then they all said yes. And then the episode ended. So it's definitely setting up Boston Rob going home next episode, or at least Derek or Wes.
Yeah, but I think it's got to be Rob because he's pissed off the traitors and he's thrown a lot of suspicion on himself with just how positive he was, which will also be interesting because I feel like Dylan will genuinely be hurt because he's so riding that high of winning and friendship, which is also something that's really fun to watch.
I think this next episode's still going to be really good. I'm not worried about the season yet. I don't know how it's going to look 3 episodes from now, but right now I'm so excited for episode 5. I think we're getting Wes versus Rob. I think, we're going to have Dylan on Team Rob. We're going to see him defending a traitor. We're going to see, it's going to be house divided, Rob versus Wes. And
the last thing I will ask you, do you think we are done with cast additions?
Oh, like regular people going in?
Well, yeah, because, I believe if I'm not mistaken, Kate went in like on the 5th episode, right? 5th or 6th episode?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Kate Chastain.
I don't think we're getting new cast. In future seasons going forward too, stop bringing people in late. I hate it. I personally don't like it. I think
it's unfair.
It wrecks the flow of the game. It wrecks kind of like the strategy you have going. And it kind of wrecks Boston Rob's game here because he is a traitor. He's a late entry. If they were to eventually banish the 3 late guys, they would banish all 3 of them if they didn't get Rob first. So yeah. I say stop bringing people in late because I was going to banish Kate eventually, no matter what, faithful or traitor, just because she came in late. So I say stop with the late entries in future seasons going forward.
Bergie, the only reason I think there might be somebody new is just because at the beginning of the first episode, they had a chance to bring Rob in at that very first scene if they killed somebody. But then there were 3 cages built for Rob, Wes, and Derek. What if Boston Rob was already in that first episode? Was there a 3rd cage built for another new player?
I think it was I go shake Boston Rob's hand and I say, Sandoval, let's get rid of Sandoval.
Oh,
Sandoval goes in the cage.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think that nobody was ever going to get eliminated. I think that's why there was 3 cages built.
Well, you've done it again. This is one of my favorite times of the week, getting to talk to you and getting to talk Traitors. I want to remind people that Bergie's IG, I will attach to the show notes. He's also on Cameo and cruiseofdeception.com. Cruise of Deception is sailing with a $50,000 total prize pool April 27th of 2025. Is there anything else happening that we need to know about for you, Bergie?
Just going to try to pass my neuroscience exam this week.
So everybody send out good thoughts for Bergie's neuroscience. I don't even know what that means, but we're rooting for you, Bergie.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.